Thank you for having me. This is exciting. I came to Idris's talk last month, which I think was the first one in Buffalo, and this is the second, so more new things happening in Buffalo, which is very exciting. I started Buffalo aerial dance, which a few of you may know. I've become the girl who hangs from the ceilings of Buffalo. I think people kind of know me as that, and so there is an obvious risk in that, which I'll talk about, but I'm going to talk about some less obvious risks too, that are still big risks. Okay, so here we go, a little Top Gun. A situation involving exposure to danger, loss, or harm. And exposure to doesn't mean it's definitely going to happen, right? If we knew it was definitely going to happen, we probably wouldn't do it. So it just means it's possible. And one question is how possible? How possible is it that there's going to be loss or harm? We'll get to that. I want to start with another question. Loss or harm to what? Do you know what you are risking? I animated this one. Will it work? Okay. I'm just going to put them all up there. So these are just a few things that I came up with that you can risk. I mean, physical harm of falling off of the silks and crashing onto the floor is a very obvious physical risk. And I think physical risks sometimes come to mind first, like looking at a lot of people's tags. You have skydiving and things like that. This is exciting, but there's so many other risks. Risking somebody's trust, risking your reputation, risking your financial stability, risking all kinds of resources that could come to danger, loss, or harm. Physical risks, mental and emotional risks. There's tons of them. And sometimes the risk might not be what you think. You have to look a little more closely to figure it out. So here are two photos of me. If you haven't ever seen it, this is what I do. This first one is from City of Night a couple years ago, and I'm pretty high. There's actually people down here in the crowd, but I am not scared at all in that picture, even though I'm like 18 feet in the air, because of the just understanding the way the silks work and the way I'm sitting. I do not feel like I'm going to fall. But people look at that and they're like, oh my God. This other one is probably more dangerous, not in the sense that I'm going to fall, but in the sense of it can damage your body. That is really the risk to me that I think of in aerial. Now I've become obsessed with muscles and joints and all of the things that have taken a beating from 8 years of doing this. So people think that, oh my God, you're going to fall, but it's really, you're taking tension and you're taking force into your body. And even though you don't fall, that really is a risk of your body deteriorating. That's very real. This is me just recently, and I'm really focused on just putting my body in a better position, because this this is the risk, is that your hips start to wear out, your shoulders start to wear out. So just to be aware that risks are not always what we might perceive they are. I'm going to take a little detour here and talk about how I get into all of this, because people always ask that too. I guess I can take credit for bringing it to Buffalo, which is pretty exciting. That top picture is actually me in Seattle. I'm from this area, but I lived in Seattle, where aerial dance is everywhere, and moved back to Buffalo in 2011 to go to grad school in philosophy, and was just looking for a place to practice. Found the alt theater and started renting some time there to practice. People found out about it and kept asking about it, and I eventually started teaching, and it evolved into what it is now. More about that in a minute or two. I love this sign, right? I see. So what kinds of risks? I mean, it is an art. Besides the danger and the being in the air and the kind of awe factor of it, it is creative, and it is an art form. So, as fellow artists, what kinds of risks do artists take? Does anyone want to chime in on that? Financial risks, yeah, for sure. I have a whole list. Embarrassment, yes, for sure. The potential of disaster. Burnout is a big one, I think. Logistics, like you have this great idea, but oh my goodness, how are you going to actually make it happen? Missing an opportunity or a deadline. Irrelevance. Selfishness, I think, too, like really devoting yourself so much to your art that you kind of shut out other people. This relates kind of metaphorically to Ariel, that's why I have the picture there, that you can risk, going too fast, going too forward, or you can risk, in a sense, being too hesitant. I think that's where I was trying to go a minute ago. You can risk being too hesitant, leaning too far to one side or the other, and you're going to fall if that happens. And this is something, probably no one other than Nina, who I work with, has done Ariel. Maybe somebody has here. You learn that you have to go towards the pain, we say, because that's what keeps you secure. You have the silks wrapped around your body, and it hurts. It's squeezing you, but that's also what's holding you. So you have to go into it to feel secure and to find your balance. It actually hurts more. So I think that works metaphorically and literally in the sense of Ariel work. But back to this idea of balance, like there's always people who are telling you to go for it, and there's always people who are telling you, maybe you should think about it a little more, maybe you should just take time to reflect. And if you ever go onto Facebook or Instagram, it's so confusing. You'll find so many messages to pull you. I look at these things, and one day I'm like, yes, I need to relax. That's right, I'm all wound up. And I need to slow it down, stop taking so many risks. And other times I'm like, no, you go for it. Respond to every call that excites your spirit. Rumi will drive you crazy. So this idea of balance, of balancing hesitation and fearlessness, and that both are risks in a sense, is everywhere. And it's very easy to get confused about where you need to be on that spectrum. And these are more beautiful photos from Beth, so thank you again. So why not go out on a limb? That's where the fruit is. Why wouldn't we go out there? It can break, right? And we know this as aerialists too. You don't rig from trees. People do it. You see pictures on Instagram that are so pretty of people with their silks in a tree, but it's a big no-no because the tree can break. So, there's a reason not to go out there, but there is a reason to go out there too. And it's again knowledge is kind of your friend here, even though the risk of the limb breaking is very real. Understanding the tree, understanding whether or not it can support you, is what helps you feel ready to take the risk or not. And sometimes the answer is not. Sometimes that limb is going to break and you don't go out there. Other times you do go for it. This is probably one of the scariest moves that I do. That's why I put these photos up here. I am holding the rope behind my back like this and kind of balancing on it, and then I actually let go and flip over it and catch it on the other side. So that's what's happening here. It took me a long time and a lot of falling to feel like I was ready to do that move. And sometimes I still miss it. And some days I'm like, you know what? No, today is not a day to do this move. And other days I'm like, okay, I'm going to go for it. So it really depends on how much you know and just whether you feel ready or not. And this is this idea of balance. Have you guys seen this picture before? I love this picture. This idea of, hesitation or just really going for it kind of plays into finding balance. And the magical part, the purple part, is where we all want to be, but you can take on more than you can do. You can get trapped by logistics. You can just be constantly striving to prove yourself, and just all these negative thoughts that happen when you're putting yourself out there in your art and taking the risk creatively. And then on the other side, just feeling like you got this down and you know what you're doing. And if you get stuck there too, you're going to end up doing the same thing, and people are not going to be interested in the same thing forever. That is something, as an aerialist, I don't want to rely on the fact that, okay, I'm 20 feet in the air and that's exciting. after a certain point in time, people have seen you be 20 feet in the air numerous times. They're like, okay, what else are you doing? So those are those artistic risks. The piece that I just did, and we had a show last week, I was on the ground most of the time, and I was scared. I was like, are people going to be bored because I'm not on the rope? I'm just like rolling around with the rope on the floor. Like, it's that element of danger is not there. But it was so much more vulnerable to me. So there's definitely that side of artistic risks too. And then I think when you've gotten to a point where you are comfortable with certain risks, they kind of feel more like little challenges. When we have the knowledge to deal with them, we don't feel quite as nervous, but it's still something to work through. So that sort of evolution from risk to challenge is an interesting spot to be in too. And that just comes from experience. The only way to find this purple part is to risk going too far in one way or the other. You can't just look at this diagram and be like, okay, that's great, I want to be there, and put yourself there. You have to explore, both sides a little bit to really know where you are. And sometimes they aren't beautiful, perfect circles like these that overlap in a very neat and organized way. Even though that's a small little sliver, it's still, and I'm going to go back to my anatomy nerd moment here where, like, if all of our psyche kind of looked like this, it would be much easier to know where that is. But everybody's different. Just like assuming finding balance is you put your hip in the socket right where it's supposed to be and then you're balanced. But everybody's hip sockets are different, just like everybody's psyche is different. This is my kind of nerd joke. And I think for a lot of people, that picture actually looks more like this. And it can look all kinds of different ways. And you kind of have to figure out how much of one or another you have. And it can change. Just like I was saying with that move that I do. Some days I do it, and some days I really don't want to. I think one day you can be the top picture, and the next day or the next month or the next year, your personality or your mental state is more here. And you have to figure out how to get, and it's not even just art, how to get into that purple part is really the moment where you're just balanced between all of this, where you don't even need to listen to that anymore, and you find kind of an internal sense of peace with taking risk. That's all I got. Thank you.